The Mountain Express. The Mountain Express groaned, a metal leviathan wrestling with the fury of the storm. Snow hammered against the windows, a relentless white curtain that obscured the world outside. The wind howled like a banshee, rattling the train cars and sending shivers down the spines of even the most seasoned travelers. Inside, the carriage lights flickered, casting long, dancing shadows that amplified the feeling of isolation. Dr. Emily Carter peered out the window, a frown etching itself onto her brow. The blizzard had intensified since they left Denver, and the rhythmic rocking of the train, usually a comforting lullaby, now felt like a precarious dance on the edge of disaster. Beside her, Gus, her golden retriever, whined softly, nudging her hand with his wet nose. "It's all right, boy," she murmured, stroking his head. "We'll be home soon." Home. The word echoed in her mind, a beacon of warmth and familiarity amidst the swirling chaos. After another grueling year at the hospital, she was desperate for the simple comforts of her family's cabin in Aspen Ridge, the crackling fireplace, the smell of pine needles, and the comforting presence of her parents. She checked her watch. They were already running behind schedule. If the storm worsened, they might be stuck on the tracks for Christmas. The thought sent a wave of disappointment crashing over her. Across the aisle, a young woman fidgeted in her seat, her eyes wide with anxiety. She was dressed in a pristine white pantsuit, a stark contrast to the earthy tones of the train car. Her blonde hair was meticulously styled and her makeup was flawless, but her trembling hands betrayed her composure. Emily recognized the signs of a panic attack. She'd seen it countless times in the ER. "Are you all right?" Emily asked gently, offering a reassuring smile. The woman jumped, startled. "Oh, yes, fine. Just a little nervous." "Big day?" The woman managed a weak smile. "The biggest. I'm getting married tomorrow." "Congratulations," Emily said, meaning it. "Where's the lucky groom waiting?" "Aspen Ridge," the woman replied, her voice barely a whisper. "Jenkins." "Sarah Jenkins." Emily's eyebrows rose slightly. "Aspen Ridge is beautiful this time of year, though you wouldn't know it looking out the window." Sarah chuckled nervously. "I'm sure it is. I wouldn't know. I've never been." "First time?" Sarah nodded, twisting a silver ring on her finger. "I'm from Miami. I'm really not used to this." She gestured vaguely at the swirling snow outside. "Well, welcome to the mountains," Emily said. "I'm Dr. Emily Carter. And this is Gus." Gus, sensing an opportunity for attention, leaned over and nudged Sarah's hand. She flinched at first, then hesitantly reached out and stroked his fur. A small smile played on her lips. "He's beautiful," she said, her voice softening. "He knows it," Emily said, smiling. "He's good at sensing when people need a little comfort." Sarah sighed. "I could use a lot of comfort right now. My wedding planner keeps calling about the flowers getting delayed and the caterer is worried about the roads being closed. And I'm pretty sure my dress is going to be a wrinkled mess by the time I get there." Emily listened patiently, offering words of encouragement. She knew that planning a wedding was stressful enough without a blizzard thrown into the mix. She watched as Sarah slowly began to relax, her shoulders loosening and her breathing becoming more regular. She was still nervous, but the edge of panic had subsided. Suddenly, the train lurched violently, throwing passengers forward in their seats. A collective gasp filled the carriage. The lights flickered again, then died, plunging them into near darkness. Only the faint glow of emergency lights illuminated the interior. Gus barked, a sharp, insistent sound that cut through the silence. "What was that?" Sarah cried, her voice trembling. Emily grabbed her arm, steadying her. "I don't know. Stay calm. We'll find out soon enough." The train shuddered to a halt, its brakes screeching in protest. The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by the howling wind and the frantic barking of Gus. A moment later, the conductor's voice crackled over the intercom, his tone strained. "Attention passengers, this is your conductor speaking. We have experienced a slight delay. Due to the extreme weather conditions, we have been forced to make an unscheduled stop. We are currently assessing the situation and will provide further updates as soon as possible. Please remain in your seats and do not attempt to leave the train." A murmur of unease rippled through the carriage. Sarah clutched Emily's arm, her knuckles white. "What's going to happen?" she whispered, her eyes wide with fear. "Am I going to miss my wedding?" Emily squeezed her hand reassuringly. "We'll be all right. Just try to stay calm. And trust me, you'll make it to your wedding." She hoped she sounded more confident than she felt. She trusted her instincts, and her instincts told her that this was more than just a slight delay. This was the beginning of something far more complicated. Stranded. A shriek of tortured metal sliced through the train car, grating on Emily's senses like fingernails on a chalkboard. The sudden jolt pitched her forward. Her laptop tumbled from the tray, hitting the floor with a dull thud. A wave of surprised cries echoed around her. Across the aisle, Sarah's white-knuckled grip on the armrests betrayed her alarm. "What was that?" she breathed, her voice a fragile tremor. Emily regained her balance, her pulse hammering in her ears. "We've stopped," abruptly. Kneeling, she checked her laptop for damage. A shared exhale of relief swept through the car as the train shuddered to a halt, the vibrations slowly fading. Then silence descended, heavy and expectant, broken only by the muffled fury of the snowstorm raging outside. The minutes crawled by, each one an age. The stillness grew oppressive, a suffocating blanket. Emily peered through the window, but the swirling white offered no insight, only a disorienting, impenetrable haze. At last, static crackled over the intercom, followed by the conductor's weary tone. "Attention, passengers. This is your conductor. We've made an unexpected stop due to significant ice buildup on the tracks. We're evaluating the situation and will update you as soon as we can. Please remain seated." A low murmur spread through the carriage. Emily could sense the collective apprehension thickening. She met Sarah's gaze. The younger woman looked devastated, her complexion ashen beneath her freckles. "Ice on the tracks." A man a few rows ahead scoffed. "In Aspen Ridge? In December? Tell me something I don't know." Emily stifled a sigh. Sarcasm wouldn't thaw the ice. She leaned closer to Sarah. "Try not to worry. They'll get us going." A sliver of doubt wormed its way into her own thoughts. This felt different. The violent stop, the storm's ferocity. This wasn't a routine delay. Sarah's carefully maintained facade crumbled. Tears glistened in her eyes. "But my wedding. Tomorrow. Everything has to be perfect. Flowers, the cake, everyone's flying in." Her voice broke. "What if I can't get there?" Emily felt a surge of compassion. She understood the pressure. Weddings, meticulously orchestrated dreams, were vulnerable to chaos. This could shatter hers. "Hey," Emily said softly, offering a reassuring smile. "Aspen Ridge is a village. They look after each other. Even with a delay, your wedding planner is already on the phone, thinking of alternatives. The town will pull together to make sure you are happy." The intercom crackled again, puncturing Emily's fragile hope. "Update, passengers. We regret to inform you the ice accumulation is worse than first thought. We're unable to continue. We are contacting local authorities to arrange alternative transport. However, owing to the blizzard's intensity, this will take some time. We ask for your patience and to conserve resources. We will provide further updates when available." A collective groan resonated through the car. Patience was wearing thin threadbare. Tears streamed down Sarah's face, carving wet paths through her makeup. "Some time? How long? My dress. It's in the baggage car. What if something happens?" She wrung her hands, her distress escalating into panic. "My whole life has been leading to this. All the planning, the dreaming. Now this." Emily grasped for a comforting lifeline. "Sarah, look at me. This is just a story you'll tell at your anniversary party. Remember the blizzard? It'll make it all the more memorable." She paused, choosing her words. "And if the person you are marrying loves you only if the flowers are perfect, you are marrying the wrong person." Sarah sniffled, a weak smile flickering across her lips. "Easy for you to say. You're not stuck about to be stranded." "I've been stuck before, in worse places," Emily said, a shadow briefly dimming her eyes. She left it at that. Some stories were coffined in the past. A child wailed near the front, his cries amplifying the growing unease. People began to rifle through bags, searching for crumbs, blankets, anything to offer solace. The air grew heavy, stale, charged with anxiety, and tinged with a whisper of desperation. Emily tightened her scarf and stared at the swirling snow. The blizzard raged on. The train was immobilized, the passengers marooned, and Sarah's wedding hung precariously in the balance. And, in her gut, Emily felt a chilling premonition that this was just the overture. A call for help. "Is there a physician on board? Is there a physician on board?" The train's intercom blared, the conductor's rising inflection betraying his alarm, a stark contrast to the subdued thrum of the emergency generator. The plea reverberated through the carriage, each echo laced with growing desperation. Emily started, jolted from her melancholic reverie. The endless white landscape beyond the window had been a hypnotic distraction from the unease churning within her. Aspen Ridge felt like a fading dream. Returning wasn't her choice, not yet. But her mother. A doctor? Did I hear that correctly? Sarah, her carefully applied makeup now smeared down her cheeks, gripped Emily's forearm. Her wedding gown, once pristine, was now a crumpled testament to ruined plans and fading hope. Emily gave a curt nod, already moving. I'm a physician. Extracting herself from Sarah's grasp, she offered a reassuring, though strained, smile. Remain here. I'll investigate. Navigating the emerging throng of passengers, Emily followed the conductor's increasingly panicked cries. A new tension filled the air, thick and suffocating, unrelated to mere travel delays. She found him near the train's rear, his face ashen in the dim emergency lighting. Doctor, heavens be praised, he rasped, his voice cracking with relief. It's Mrs. Peterson. She's gone into labor. Labor? Here, of all places. Now, of all times? Emily's thoughts spiraled. It had been months since her last delivery. Not since. She forced the memory down, anchoring herself to the unfolding crisis. Where is she located? He gestured toward a cramped sleeping compartment. In there. Her husband is with her, but he's, well, inexperienced with this sort of thing. Emily inhaled deeply and squeezed past the conductor. The tiny room was stuffy, saturated with a cloying mix of perspiration and dread. A man, his features creased with anxiety, knelt beside the lower berth, tightly clasping a woman's hand. Mrs. Peterson lay prone, her expression a mask of agony, her breathing shallow and labored. I'm Dr. Carter, Emily announced, her voice a deliberate balm of composure against the tremor in her hands. Allow me to assess the situation. The husband, Mr. Peterson, recoiled slightly, a wave of relief washing over his face. Thank you, doctor. We are truly grateful. Emily knelt beside Mrs. Peterson, clinical precision supplanting her fear. She performed a swift examination, her fingers moving with trained expertise. The contractions were severe, relentless, alarmingly so. How far along is she in her pregnancy? Emily questioned, her gaze intent on Mrs. Peterson's face. 30 weeks, Mr. Peterson stammered, his voice wavering. Only 30 weeks. 30 weeks. Preterm. Critically preterm. Dread coiled in Emily's stomach. This was more than simply assisting in childbirth. This was a battle for survival, 2 lives hanging in the balance, under the most dire circumstances imaginable, a train marooned amidst a raging blizzard, isolated from civilization. Scarce resources. A complete absence of specialized medical technology. We must get her to a hospital at once, Emily stated, her voice strained. The words, while self-evident, resonated with the sheer impossibility of their situation. Mr. Peterson's face crumbled, his hope visibly draining away. But the storm, the train. I comprehend, Emily replied, softening her tone. I understand. We will exert every possible effort. I must ascertain what we have available. Is there a first aid kit on board? Anything at all? Mr. Peterson shook his head mutely, his eyes wide with stark terror. Only some blankets and pillows. And drinking water. Emily internally cursed their misfortune. Blankets and water. Hardly sufficient for a premature birth. She needed clarity, evaluation, resourcefulness. All right, she declared, injecting a steadiness she didn't possess into her voice. All right, Mr. Peterson. It's essential that you maintain composure. Can you assist me? He nodded mutely, his gaze locked on Emily's. Splendid. Firstly, we require more space. Ensure she has adequate room to breathe. Then, locate the conductor. Instruct him that we require any available medical supplies. Anything whatsoever. Furthermore, he must attempt to contact someone. Anyone. We must relay a distress signal. Mr. Peterson leapt to his feet, his movements agitated and clumsy. He hesitated by the doorway, his face a reflection of overwhelming fear. Doctor, he whispered, his voice barely audible. Will they both be all right? Emily observed Mrs. Peterson, her features gaunt and pallid, her body convulsing with each contraction. She looked at Mr. Peterson, his eyes filled with desperate supplication. She couldn't offer false comfort. I cannot offer any guarantees, she responded, her voice both honest and somber. However, we will exhaust every conceivable measure to ensure the best possible outcome. Gus knows the way. Gus was agitated. He whined, a low, guttural rumble that vibrated through Emily's legs as she knelt beside Mrs. Olson. The woman's face was contorted in pain, her breath coming in ragged gasps. Easy, dear, Emily murmured, dabbing Mrs. Olson's forehead with a cool, damp cloth. Just breathe. We're doing everything we can. But inside, Emily's calm facade was crumbling. The baby was coming faster than she'd anticipated, and the meager supplies were dwindling rapidly. The storm raged outside, a howling beast clawing at the train's metal skin. Hope felt as distant as Aspen Ridge. Gus, however, seemed to sense the shift in urgency. He rose, his usually floppy ears perked forward, and paced the narrow aisle. He sniffed at the air vents, then at the gap beneath the train doors, a low growl rumbling in his chest. "What is it, boy?" Emily asked, her voice laced with fatigue. He didn't answer with a bark or a whine, but with a persistent nudging against her leg. He pushed, not playfully, but with a focused insistence that startled her. He then trotted to the train doors and back, repeating the sequence, his brown eyes pleading. "He's restless," someone commented from nearby. "Probably feels trapped like the rest of us." Emily wanted to dismiss it, but there was something different about Gus's behavior. This wasn't just canine cabin fever. He was focused, determined. He began to bark, sharp, insistent yelps aimed directly at the doors. It wasn't his usual playful bark, but a commanding, urgent sound. "Gus, quiet," Emily said, but her voice lacked conviction. She was watching him, really watching him, and a flicker of something sparked in her mind. Gus had been a rescue dog, abandoned as a pup. She'd found him shivering and scared, barely clinging to life. But even then he possessed an uncanny ability to navigate. During their hikes in the mountains around Aspen Ridge, he'd unerringly lead her back to the trail if she strayed, his nose twitching, his body a compass. She'd always attributed it to his breed, a mix of shepherd and something else, something wild. Could he smell something? Someone? Through the snow and the steel and the biting wind? The idea seemed ludicrous, desperate even. But desperation was precisely what she was feeling. "He's probably just picking up the scent of other animals," a man scoffed, overhearing. Emily ignored him. She knelt again, looking into Gus's eyes. "What is it, boy? What do you smell?" He whined again, a low, pleading sound, and nudged his nose against the door. Then he looked back at her, his gaze intense, unwavering. A memory surfaced, a conversation with a local tracker, Old Man Hemlock, who lived in a cabin deep in the woods. He'd told her stories of dogs who could smell a lost hiker miles away, dogs who could sense subtle shifts in the wind, dogs who possessed an instinct honed over generations. Sometimes, Hemlock had said, his eyes twinkling, you gotta trust the animal. They know things we've forgotten. Emily looked at Mrs. Olson, her face pale and drawn, and then back at Gus, his tail now wagging tentatively, hopefully. The woman needed help, and quickly. The baby wouldn't wait for the blizzard to pass. "He wants out," a woman said, her voice hesitant. Maybe there's something out there?" Emily stood, her decision made. It was a gamble, a wild, improbable gamble. But she had no other options. "All right, Gus," she said, her voice firm despite the tremor in her hands. "Show me." She looked around at the other passengers, their faces etched with a mixture of fear and disbelief. "I'm going to see what he smells. I don't know if he can lead us to help, but we have to try." She rummaged through her bag, pulling out her warmest coat and a thick scarf. "Someone needs to stay with Mrs. Olson. Keep her warm, keep her calm." A young woman, barely more than a girl, stepped forward. "I will, doctor. I helped my mother with my younger siblings." Emily nodded, grateful for the offer. She grabbed a small medical kit just in case. "Wish me luck," she said, then turned to the train doors. The mechanism to open them was stiff, frozen from the cold. With a grunt, she heaved, and the heavy doors creaked open, revealing a swirling vortex of white. The wind howled, biting at her exposed skin. Snow stung her face, blurring her vision. Gus didn't hesitate. He plunged into the blizzard, his dark coat disappearing into the white. Emily took a deep breath, steeling herself against the cold and the fear. She couldn't see him, but she could hear him, a series of short, excited barks that cut through the wind. She stepped out of the train and into the storm. She was trusting a dog, her dog, to lead her to salvation. It was the only hope she had. Into the blizzard. Emily pulled her scarf tighter, the wool scratching against her skin. "Okay, Sarah, let's do this. Gus will lead the way." She clipped Gus's leash to his harness, the metal cold against her gloved hand. The dog, sensing the shift in atmosphere, whined softly, his brown eyes questioning, but his tail still wagged with determined optimism. Sarah, swathed in a makeshift bundle of blankets over her soaked wedding dress, shivered uncontrollably. "Are you sure about this, doctor? It's insane out there." Her voice trembled as much as her body. "It's Emily, and no, I'm not sure. But staying here isn't an option. We need to find help for Amelia." Emily tried to sound more confident than she felt. The image of the young woman's pale face, contorted in pain, spurred her forward. The train doors groaned open, revealing a swirling vortex of white. The wind howled like a banshee, snatching at their breath and stinging their exposed skin with icy needles. Stepping off the train felt like entering another world, a world of blinding white and deafening wind. Gus, however, seemed unfazed. He lowered his head against the gale and pulled forward, his powerful body a furry wedge cutting through the snow. Emily gripped the leash tightly, letting him guide her. Sarah, hampered by the bulky blankets and sodden dress, stumbled behind. "Wait," Sarah gasped, her voice barely audible above the wind's fury. I can't see." Emily turned back, shielding her eyes with a gloved hand. Sarah's face was buried in the blankets, her shoulders shaking. "Sarah, you need to keep moving. We can't stop. But my dress, it's dragging me down. It's like I'm carrying a ton of bricks." She lifted a corner of the blanket, revealing the once pristine white dress, now a muddy, waterlogged mess. Emily knelt, her knees sinking into the snow. "Look, I know this is awful. Your wedding dress, your wedding day, it's all a disaster. But right now, Amelia needs us more than anything. We have to focus." She pulled a small knife from her pocket, the metal gleaming dully in the diffused light. "I'm going to cut the hem. It won't be pretty, but it will make it easier to walk." Sarah nodded, tears freezing on her eyelashes. "Do it. Just do it." Emily quickly and efficiently hacked at the dress, the thick fabric resisting the blade. Chunks of snow-laden lace and satin fell to the ground, swallowed by the blizzard. When she was done, the dress was significantly shorter, though still cumbersome. "Better?" Emily asked. Sarah took a tentative step. "A little. Thanks." They continued their trek, Gus relentlessly pulling forward. The wind intensified, plastering snow against their faces and making it difficult to breathe. Emily focused on Gus, on the steady rhythm of his paws crunching through the snow, on the unwavering purpose in his gait. The landscape was a blur of white, the train quickly disappearing behind them. Emily had no idea where they were going, trusting only in Gus's instincts and the faint hope that he knew something they didn't. She scanned the horizon, but saw nothing but swirling snow and the growing fear that they were simply walking into oblivion. Suddenly, Gus stopped, his body tense. He whined, a low, guttural sound, and turned his head to the right. Emily followed his gaze, squinting through the blizzard. First, she saw nothing. Then, a flicker of light, a faint, yellowish glow that seemed to dance in the swirling snow. It was distant, barely visible, but it was there. "Did you see that?" Emily shouted, her voice strained against the wind. Sarah, her face buried in her scarf, looked up. "See what?" "I can't see anything." "Light. I think there's a light over there." "Gus sees it too." Emily pointed in the direction the dog was facing. Sarah hesitated, then followed Emily's gaze. I think I see it." "Maybe. Is it a house?" Hope, fragile but undeniable, flickered in Emily's chest. "A house, a cabin, anything would be better than this endless white." "I don't know, but we have to get there." "Gus, lead the way." Gus barked once, a sharp, triumphant sound, and surged forward, his tail wagging furiously. Emily and Sarah followed, their bodies aching, their faces numb, but their spirits lifted by the promise of shelter and, perhaps, the help that Amelia desperately needed. The light, however faint, was a beacon in the storm, a fragile promise of survival. It felt like a lifetime before they moved closer. The wind whipped the snow even more intensely, but the light grew a little brighter. Emily noticed that Gus had altered course. He was no longer heading directly to the light, but rather at an angle. It was then that Emily realized that the ground beneath them was no longer flat, but sloping downward. It must be a ravine or a ditch. The light was probably on the other side. The cabin in the snow. The wind clawed at them, a relentless beast trying to drag them back into the white oblivion. Gus, a furry, four-legged engine of determination, pulled them forward, his low growls now punctuated with excited yips. The landscape was a blur of white and gray, the only discernible feature the deepening drifts that threatened to swallow them whole. Sarah stumbled, her silk dress snagging on a buried branch. I can't feel my feet," she gasped, her voice thin and reedy against the wind's howl. Emily crouched beside her, brushing snow from her face. "Just a little further, Sarah. Gus smells something. We're close." She knew she was grasping at straws, but Sarah needed hope, and so did she. Emily's own legs screamed in protest, her muscles burning with the effort of pushing through the heavy snow. Then Gus stopped. He stood rigid, his body vibrating with barely contained energy, barking furiously at a dark shape huddled against the swirling snow. As they drew closer, the shape resolved itself into a small, sturdy cabin, smoke curling from its chimney like a beckoning finger. A single, warm light glowed from a window, a beacon of salvation in the heart of the storm. Relief washed over Emily, so potent it almost brought her to her knees. "We made it," she breathed, her voice thick with emotion. Gus scratched at the cabin door, whimpering impatiently. Emily reached out, her fingers numb, and pushed it open. The scent of wood smoke and something indefinably homely, a blend of herbs and warm bread, perhaps, rushed out to meet them, a tangible embrace against the biting cold. The cabin was small but cozy, the walls lined with shelves overflowing with jars and dried herbs. A wood-burning stove radiated warmth, casting dancing shadows on the rough-hewn walls. In a rocking chair by the fire sat a woman, her face etched with wrinkles that spoke of a life lived outdoors. Her silver hair was pulled back in a severe bun, and her eyes, the clear blue of a winter sky, were sharp and assessing. She held a book in her lap, but she wasn't reading. She was waiting. "Well, now," the woman said, her voice raspy but firm. "Brought half a blizzard in with you, haven't you?" She didn't seem surprised, merely observant. Emily, still catching her breath, managed a weak smile. We were on the train. It's stranded. And there's a pregnant woman in labor. She needs help." The woman's gaze flicked to Sarah, still shivering in her ruined wedding dress. "Looks like your happy day took a turn," she remarked dryly. Then, turning her attention back to Emily, "Midwife work's been quiet these last few years, but seems the mountains have decided to send me a challenge. Name's Agnes Olson. And you are?" "Emily Carter. I'm a doctor." Agnes raised a skeptical eyebrow. "City doctor, I reckon. Don't see many in these parts unless they're lost." "Aspen Ridge isn't exactly a city," Emily countered, trying to keep the weariness from her voice. "And I grew up there, I'm just returning home." "Returning home through a blizzard after abandoning a train? Must be a good story there. Save it for later. Right now, we got a baby to deliver." Agnes rose from her rocking chair, her movements surprisingly spry for her age. "Get yourselves warmed up. I'll pack my bag. And you," she said, pointing a gnarled finger at Sarah, "get out of that ridiculous dress before you catch your death. I've got a spare quilt you can wrap yourself in." Sarah, still shivering uncontrollably, nodded gratefully. Emily watched as Agnes moved about the cabin with a quiet efficiency, gathering supplies and barking orders. There was a sense of calm competence about her that was deeply reassuring. Here, in the small cabin, nestled in the heart of the storm, she felt a flicker of hope she hadn't dared to acknowledge since leaving the train. "Gus, stay," Emily commanded, watching the dog settle down near the stove, his tail thumping softly against the wooden floor. Turning back to Agnes, Emily asked, "Do you have a phone? We need to call for help." Agnes chuckled, a dry, rustling sound. "Phone? Honey, the only phone I got is a good pair of lungs and a shout loud enough to wake the bears. Power went out hours ago. We're on our own out here." Emily's heart sank. They were still isolated, still cut off from the world. But as she looked at Agnes Olson, her face illuminated by the warm glow of the fire, she knew they weren't entirely alone. They had each other, and perhaps, just perhaps, that was enough. "All right," Emily said, squaring her shoulders. "Let's go save a baby." A race against time. The handheld radio crackled, spitting static before the conductor's strained voice cut through. "Agnes, you there? This is Ben. Still no ETA on rescue. The snow's not letting up and they're having trouble getting plows through. Could be another 4-5 hours at least." Agnes's face, etched with worry lines moments before, settled into a mask of grim acceptance. "Understood, Ben. Keep us posted." She clicked off the radio and turned to Emily, her blue eyes unwavering. "For hours, maybe more. That babe isn't waiting for anyone." Emily felt a familiar knot tighten in her stomach. 4 hours. Enough time for everything to go wrong. "Then we need to get ready," she said, forcing a calm she didn't feel. She glanced at Sarah, whose face was pale but determined. "Sarah, are you doing okay?" "As okay as I can be," Sarah replied, managing a weak smile. "Just a little scared." "We all are," Emily admitted. "But we're going to get through this. Together." She turned back to Agnes. "What do you need me to do?" Agnes, already moving with a practiced efficiency, pointed to a stack of clean linens. "Fetch me those, dear. And see if you can find any more blankets. We need to keep Sarah and the little one warm." She then gestured to a kettle hanging over the stove. "And put some water on to boil. We'll need it for cleaning." Emily sprang into action, grateful for the distraction. The small cabin, usually cozy, now felt cramped and charged with nervous energy. Gus, sensing the shift, nudged against her leg, his warm, solid presence a comforting anchor. She patted his head, drawing strength from his unwavering loyalty. Finding extra blankets proved challenging. The cabin was sparsely furnished, and Agnes, it seemed, lived a life of minimalist practicality. Emily eventually discovered a trunk tucked away in a corner, filled with quilts and woolen throws. They smelled faintly of lavender and wood smoke, a nostalgic aroma that momentarily transported her back to her grandmother's house. As she carried the blankets back to the main room, she noticed Agnes speaking quietly to Sarah, her voice soothing and reassuring. Sarah, despite her obvious discomfort, seemed calmer, her breathing more even. "Right, let's get this place ready," Agnes announced, clapping her hands together. "Emily, if you could clear that table, we'll need a flat surface. And Sarah, dear, let's get you settled closer to the fire." The next hour was a flurry of activity. Emily cleared the table, scrubbing it clean with hot water and soap. Agnes arranged the blankets into a makeshift bed near the hearth, ensuring Sarah was as comfortable as possible. The kettle whistled, and Emily poured the boiling water into a basin, adding antiseptic solution from Agnes's well-stocked medical kit. "We need to think about light," Emily said, surveying the cabin. The storm raged outside, casting the room in a perpetual twilight. "Do you have any more lanterns?" Agnes rummaged in a cupboard, producing a kerosene lantern and a handful of candles. "This is it, I'm afraid. We'll have to make do." Emily carefully positioned the lantern to provide the best illumination, while Agnes strategically placed the candles around the room, creating a warm, flickering glow. The combined light did little to dispel the gloom outside, but it transformed the cabin into a sanctuary, a small island of warmth and hope in the midst of the storm. As the light grew stronger, Emily noticed the details of the cabin, the hand-stitched curtains on the windows, the dried herbs hanging from the rafters, the worn but well-loved rocking chair in the corner. It was a space that spoke of resilience, of quiet strength, of a life lived in harmony with the unforgiving landscape. Despite the urgency of the situation, Emily felt a flicker of something akin to peace. She was surrounded by capable women, working together to bring a new life into the world. It was a far cry from the sterile environment of the hospital, but it felt right, authentic. But somewhere in the back of her mind, a voice screamed that this was all going to go wrong. A Christmas miracle. Agnes's voice, a low, steady thrum, sliced through the gale's ululation. "Inhale, Sarah. Exhale. Remember our practice." Beside her, Emily dabbed Sarah's forehead with a dampened cloth. Lamplight painted the cabin walls in dancing shadows, the hearth spitting embers, yet the small space felt paradoxically confined and exposed against the tempest's wrath. The air was thick, a coppery bite mingling with the pungent aroma of Agnes's herbal concoction. I can't," Sarah choked, her features a mask of agony. Her knuckles shone bone-white against Emily's hand. "Nonsense, dearie," Agnes countered, her hands working with seasoned assurance. "You're progressing beautifully. The babe is nearly here. Can you feel it?" Emily caught sight of it then, the crowning a dark smudge against the pallor of Sarah's skin. "Agnes is right, Sarah. So close. You're doing wonderfully." Apprehension flickered in Sarah's gaze, but a steely resolve soon superseded it. "Fine," she rasped. "Fine, I'll do it." Agnes coached Sarah through the next push, her tone a soothing balm. Emily monitored Sarah's pulse, her own heart hammering a frantic tattoo against her ribs. The anxieties she'd long suppressed, specters of the past, threatened to drown her. She wrestled them down, anchoring herself to the present moment, the woman before her, the nascent life yearning to break free. "Now pant, Sarah, like a little pup," Agnes instructed. "There you go. Wonderful." The baby's head emerged, a miniature, wrinkled visage contorted in effort. A tidal wave of something akin to reverence crashed over Emily. She hadn't felt this, grounded in years. "One final push, Sarah. Everything you have," Agnes commanded. Sarah heaved, her spine arching against the makeshift birthing cot. A guttural cry tore from her throat. And then, with a final, victorious surge, the infant slid into the world. Agnes swiftly cleared the newborn's airways. A frail, mewling sound pierced the air, a sound so delicate, so brimming with potential it stung Emily's eyes with tears. "It's a boy," Agnes proclaimed, emotion lacing her voice. She swaddled the baby in a soft, flannel wrap. Sarah, spent but luminous, reached out a trembling hand. Let me see him." Agnes nestled the infant in Sarah's arms. Sarah gazed down at the tiny bundle, her face a study in awe and disbelief. "He's perfect." Emily assisted Agnes in cleaning Sarah before turning her attention to the newborn. Her trained hands moved with instinctive precision, assessing his vitals. Small, yet robust. Healthy. A wave of profound relief washed over her, leaving her momentarily weak. "He appears perfect," Emily said, her voice a bare rasp. "But we must monitor him closely. He arrived prematurely." Sarah, still captivated by her son, lifted her gaze. "Thank you," she breathed. "Thank you both. I don't know what I'd have done without you." "You did it, Sarah," Agnes reassured, patting her hand. "You were magnificent." A sudden realization dawned on Sarah. "My wedding dress," she exclaimed, her eyes widening in dismay. "It's ruined." She surveyed the mess of afterbirth and amniotic fluid. Emily chuckled softly. "I suspect you have a better justification than a snowstorm to postpone the wedding, Sarah." A smile touched Sarah's lips. "I suppose so," she murmured, then returned her focus to her son. "He's far more important than a dress, isn't he?" She paused. "What should I call him?" Agnes poked at the fire, sending embers spiraling up the chimney like golden butterflies. "He's a Christmas miracle, plain and simple. Call him Noel." Sarah weighed the suggestion, her gaze tender on the infant's face. "Noel," she repeated, testing the name. "I like it. Welcome to the world, Noel." She looked up at Emily, an idea sparking in her eyes. "Emily, would you do me the honor of being his godmother?" Emily froze, the unexpected request catching her completely off guard. "Sarah, the words lodged in her throat. The prospect of shouldering responsibility for another life after all she'd endured was daunting. But then she saw Noel, so small and vulnerable, cradled in his mother's arms. And she looked at Sarah, her face radiant with newfound love and burgeoning hope. Something within her shifted. The fear didn't evaporate, but it receded, yielding to a nascent something else. Something akin to faith. She met Sarah's gaze and nodded, a tentative smile gracing her lips. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I would be honored." The baby stirred in Sarah's arms, a soft whimper escaping his lips. "Here, you need to rest, let me take him," Sarah said, carefully transferring the infant to Emily. Emily cradled him gently, commencing a slow, rhythmic rock. The baby settled, the warmth emanating from Emily coaxing him back into slumber. In that instant, as the blizzard howled its fury outside and the fire crackled a comforting tune in the hearth, a profound tranquility descended upon the cabin. Three women, drawn together by fate and circumstance, linked by the wonder of a new beginning. A Christmas miracle indeed. Rescue and reflection. The wind still harried the cabin, though its previous frenzy had subsided to a spent whisper. Emily leaned against the frosted window pane. The blizzard's veil had lifted, unveiling a dawn sky bruised with purple and gray. "They'll be here momentarily," Agnes soothed, her tone steady as she tended a simmering pot whose fragrance suggested both cinnamon and optimism. Sarah, cocooned in blankets, watched Noel slumber in a makeshift cradle assembled from a laundry hamper and more layers of fleece. Her complexion, still fragile, now held a beatific light. "Hard to grasp it's actually over," she breathed, a murmur more for herself. Emily managed a smile. "You were magnificent, Sarah. Both of you." A glance at Agnes offered a silent tide of gratitude for her unwavering support. Agnes simply nodded, lines of experience etched around her eyes. A low thrum vibrated up through the floor. It amplified, clarifying into the unmistakable growl of powerful engines. Then voices erupted. "They've arrived." Relief flooded Sarah's tone, a stark departure from the terror that had held her captive just hours prior. The door swung inward, a blast of frigid air preceding two figures encased in vibrant orange parkas. Behind them, the revolving lights of a snowcat cast the cabin in a rhythmic, pulsating glow. "Mrs. Peterson," one of them called, his voice muffled by a wool scarf. "We're here to transport you to the hospital." The rescue team proceeded with practiced efficiency, their movements gentle and reassuring as they assessed Sarah and Noel. Within moments, Sarah was secured on a gurney, Noel nestled in a specialized infant carrier. Emily watched as they bore Sarah into the swirling snow which momentarily swallowed them from sight. Buster whined softly, nosing her hand. Kneeling, she stroked his thick fur. "It's all right, boy. They're going to be fine." Agnes stood nearby, her gaze following the departing figures. "A fortunate conclusion," she breathed. "A true benediction." Once Sarah and Noel were safely inside the heated ambulance, a rescue worker approached Emily and Agnes. "Do either of you require medical attention or transport?" Emily shook her head. "We're fine, thank you. We'll be clearing the tracks shortly," he informed them. "The train should be able to proceed within a few hours. Accommodations are available at the town's community center in the interim should you require them." He hesitated. "You did exceptional work here." "Truly." He turned and headed back to the ambulance, leaving Emily and Agnes alone in the sudden hush of the cabin. The silence pressed down, heavy with unspoken feeling. Emily began tidying, straightening linens and gathering discarded medical supplies. "She asked you to be Noel's godmother," Agnes broke the quiet. Emily's hand stilled above a used syringe. The weight of Sarah's proposition settled upon her, amplified by the night's trials. I don't know what to say. Say yes, Agnes advised simply. She recognized something in you, Emily. Something you've been attempting to conceal. Emily met Agnes's knowing gaze. I'm not certain I'm prepared for that level of commitment. Commitment is a choice, Emily. And also a gift. A chance for renewal. Agnes moved closer, her hand briefly touching Emily's arm. You were destined to be here, Emily. Destined to aid Sarah. Destined to help that little boy enter the world. Don't retreat from it. Emily surveyed the cabin, the remnants of the frantic night. The sharp scent of antiseptic mingled with the comforting sweetness of cinnamon. She envisioned Sarah, her face etched with exhaustion yet illuminated by love. She pictured Noel, so small and fragile, his life placed, in part, in her hands. The train whistle echoed in the distance, a plaintive sound that resonated through the valley. It served as a reminder of the world beyond, the world she had been so eager to reclaim. But now that world felt remote, almost illusory. She turned back to Agnes. What will you do now? Agnes smiled. I'll remain here. Await the next storm, the next wayfarer in distress. She paused. This is my purpose, just as being here was yours. Emily inhaled deeply, the frigid air sharp in her lungs. She considered her life back in Aspen Ridge, the comfortable structure she had so meticulously built. It now felt constricting, devoid of true significance. She understood what she needed to do. Not only for Sarah, not only for Noel, but for herself. I believe, she declared, her voice now firm, I believe I'm ready. A changed perspective. The helicopter's rhythmic chop carried Sarah toward Aspen Ridge, Noel nestled securely in Emily's arms. Emily watched them vanish into the swirling gloom, a tight band around her chest gradually easing. Though weakened, the storm still raged, forecasting a slow, punishing journey home for her and Agnes. Well, Agnes declared, her voice a gravelly murmur tinged with wry amusement, already meticulously packing her well-used medical kit. Ready to face the music back in town? Emily summoned a wan smile. As ready as I'll ever be. Just hoping the passes are passable by morning. She felt Gus's nudge, his cold, wet nose a silent pledge of support. The following day broke under a tentative truce. The tempest had withdrawn, leaving a landscape sculpted from pristine white. The sky, a washout blue, offered only a fleeting reprieve. Agnes hitched a ride with a snowplow bound for a neighboring county, leaving Emily and Gus to await the first cleared train line. Late that afternoon, the train crawled into Aspen Ridge, a sooty serpent against the bright expanse. Disembarking, Emily felt a wave of warmth engulf her. Familiar faces, Dr. Harding, colleagues from the clinic, even Mrs. Gable from the bakery, beamed with a potent mix of relief and concern. Emily, thank heavens you're safe. Dr. Harding squeezed her tight. We heard about the derailment and then the infant. You're a lifesaver, Emily. Lifesaver? The word felt alien, almost absurd. She'd simply reacted, done what was necessary, what any physician would have. Yet in their eyes shone a profound gratitude that resonated deeper than mere medical achievement. It was a spark of hope ignited in bleak despair. Gus barked, his tail a blur, soaking up the adulation. He certainly seemed to revel in the hero accolades. Clinic staff ushered her toward a waiting vehicle, promising a hot meal and restorative rest. As they drove, Emily noticed an anomaly. The town square, typically deserted on winter nights, throbbed with activity. Strings of festive lights twinkled, illuminating a sizable crowd. A banner proclaimed, "Welcome home, Dr. Carter." Before she could object, the car halted and she was gently guided out. A wave of cheers cascaded over her as she entered the square. People surged forward, offering handshakes, hugs, words of heartfelt appreciation. It was overwhelming, unforeseen, and profoundly touching. Later, nestled on her couch with Gus softly snoring nearby, Emily received a text from Sarah. We made it. Wedding's about to begin. A little late, but who's counting? Thank you, Emily. For everything. Eternally grateful. Attached was a photo. Sarah, luminous in a simple ivory gown, stood beside a visibly anxious groom. Her smile was different, more profound, etched with the weight of their shared ordeal. Emily responded, You look radiant, Sarah. Congratulations. The next day, Emily was roused by the peal of church bells. It was Sarah's wedding. She pictured Sarah at the altar, embarking on a fresh chapter. Emily brewed coffee and gazed out the window. Aspen Ridge sparkled under the sun, the snow like a scattering of diamonds. The tempest had passed, leaving a feeling of renewal in its wake. She recalled the train, the isolation, the dread. Sarah's fierce resolve, Agnes's steady hand, Gus's unwavering devotion. And Noel, the tiny miracle born in the heart of chaos. She opened her laptop and began composing not clinical notes, but a personal entry. She wrote of the storm, the derailment, the delivery, of fear and valor, loss and resilience, and the unexpected bonds that connect us. As she wrote, she understood that the storm hadn't merely stranded a train, it had also revealed an inner strength, a fortitude she hadn't known she possessed. The phone buzzed. It was Dr. Harding. Emily, the Jenkins nuptials. It's all anyone can talk about. Apparently, the bride gave a speech about a doctor and her dog who saved her life. About second chances and miracles wrought from the snow. The whole town is abuzz. You're practically a local saint. Emily chuckled, a genuine, resonant sound that filled the quiet cabin. A saint, am I? I just delivered a baby, Harding. A baby delivered in the back of Beyond during the worst blizzard in years by a physician who's been avoiding deliveries for ages. That's the stuff of legends, Emily. Own it. Emily glanced at Gus, who thumped his tail contentedly. Perhaps Harding was right. Perhaps it was time to embrace the persona, to embrace the present, and to finally release the ghosts of the past. Noelle's delivery wasn't a painful echo of the past, it was a new dawn, a new beginning. A chance at redemption.